My wife made a statement to me probably about a year ago that really impacted me. I am not the person I want to be, but I'm sure as heck we don't need all this.
Observer, listener, thinker, writer, encourager, spinner of heroic stories. Robert Mahler, more than 30 years of experience.
God, mosquitoes. Why? Struggling every single day.
His passion lies in helping individuals and organizations.
I don't care to look stupid. I'm good at it. I practice it frequently.
Welcome to Are You Like Me, the podcast where we dive into the lives of extraordinary individuals and discover what makes them unique. I'm your host, Patrick, and today I'm joined by Robert Mahler, a true luminary in the world of software and system development, consulting, and training. What I can say that with a storied career spanning over 30 years, his expertise is unparalleled. And let's unravel the similarities, uncover the quirks, and glean invaluable lessons from his journey. Thank you for joining us today, Bob. I'm glad we finally met. I know I was really looking forward, and it took a while to set things. And, we are here. I would love to unpack and surface some of these astonishing activities that you perform. How are you?
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for this opportunity. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it or dreading it, but either way, it should be interesting. So I'm doing well. It's a beautiful springtime here in the Rocky Mountains, although we're supposed to get a foot of snow tomorrow. So, it'll 70 degrees Fahrenheit today, 30 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow with snow. So other than that, it's a beautiful day.
I'm based in Cheshire, which is kind of a wet area for UK, really wet. I've been yesterday in London and it was kind of warmer, also wet, so I haven't been lucky. However, we did have -1 Celsius degree in the evening, so that's no spring. Last week, I've been in Berlin and I've been in Poland, and we had 26 degrees Celsius, which is basically beginning of the summer. So my shock between this weather is enormous, but it is what it is. We shouldn't be complaining. Were you born in that place, like born and bred, or just moved after a while?
Well, it's interesting. I was actually born about 15 miles as the crow flies from where I'm living right now. And I've spent probably 90% of my life within 50 miles of this area. Spent about 10 years in Dayton, Ohio. So just for people who weren't from Colorado or from the United States, that's probably about 1,000 miles east of where I am right now. But other than that, this has been my home forever.
You are planning to stay there?
Planning. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. If people probably know this, if 4 years ago I had told you what would happen in the last 4 years, you would have told me I was out of my mind. So, I can't say what's going to happen tomorrow, or the day after. My plans are to stay, but it's like they say, man plans, God laughs. You never know.
I wanted to kick off with your professional background. It is very interesting. I'm not saying that your private life is not. It is even more. But such a personality in such a setting, which is very software system, very precise, very logical. And I know you have laser focus, and I'll just unravel that a little bit later. What happened that you ended up where you are currently? Is it any pivotal moment, or it was just gradually building this career, or maybe that was just your interest since you were just a small child?
Well, it's interesting because I actually fell into software many, many years ago. I'm trying to remember. I was probably in my early 20s, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, when I got my first IT job. And it was purely by accident. I was looking for a new job. I saw this ad in the paper. I said, I have no idea what this is, but it sounds interesting. So it was a, quote, data entry / computer operator for a local mountaineering company, which is very interesting. Very first computer I worked on is the size of a refrigerator right now. And my little watch here has more storage and capabilities than that computer did. But anyway, long story short, that's where I started. And that's where I wrote my first basic program. And then after that, just kind of kept into that as a computer operator, and then moved into programming, just seemed to be the next step to do. And went from there. I always worked for small companies. And then a friend of mine introduced me to this company I'd never heard of before called EDS, Electronic Data Systems. Went to work for them, worked for them for probably 15 years as a developer, as a project manager. And then I kind of took a swerve, and in that I moved into, I'll call it process consulting, mainly because I was tired of seeing people work 40 hours by Tuesday.
Mm.
It seemed like there had to be a better way to do this. So I moved into process consulting, did, for those of you who may remember this, the software capability maturity model, jumped into that one, started doing that, and then made another swerve into Agile. But stepping back, I was doing Agile before Agile was cool, before we even knew what it was. Even as a developer, I was involved in, we'll call it prototyping, trying new things, working as a team. I remember my first Agile team was four of us stuck in a closet. I mean, this was literally a janitor's closet in the back of the office, working on this stuff together, because our manager didn't want other people to know what we were doing because we were trying something new. But it was Agile. We had stickies on the wall. We didn't know that this was a Kanban board. We didn't know it. We had stickies on the wall. We moved them. We did demos. So anyway, long answer to your short question. My career has been kind of like this. Some people are this way. I go this way and then that way.
So, I mean, I would love to hear the long story, especially about, janitor cabinet where you are doing Kanban board. And I think that for many of us, when we start doing things, whatever it is, software development, buildings, we have this tendency to figuring out, oh, there must be a better way of doing it. And when you are painting even, your wall, just a stupid example, you might find out, oh, my hand hurts after a while. Is there anything, I don't know, longer pole? And that's the curiosity. Yep. So I think what you described, you've been always a person with this inquisitive mindset, looking what else is there. Is it the end of doing it in the right way?
I think it's been a combination of a couple of things. Number one, you said, is there a better way to do this? Because, I get, my shoulders start to hurt after a while. And honestly, I get bored. I get bored after a while. And so, okay, is there something different I can do? Learn something new. If I'm not at least trying something new, learning something new every once in a while, I get really bored and I end up surfing the internet. And that's just not a good thing. So, I start, for example, just recently, I became a candidate for our local house district for our state house. I've never done politics in my life. The most I've done in politics is voting. And, somebody asked me, would you be willing to do this? And I said, I have no idea what it is or what it means, but count me in. I'll try it. What the heck? And then recently, our friend down the street, he runs a limo service. And he said, hey, Bob, I got a problem. I need some help driving my limo sometimes. Can you help me out? And I said, hey, never driven a limo before, but I'll give it a shot. And I've met some incredibly interesting people this way. So, it's just, I've always been curious. There's some things I won't do. For example, you're not going to see me jumping out of an airplane with a parachute on my back. Ain't doing that. But I've always been curious to try new things and see more than that, how can I apply the things I'm learning to my professional life?
I think that when you mention limo, that's a great place to start podcast. You can just interview people if they are willing to share some secrets, because you never know what's happening over there. You mentioned very interesting thing, that you're open to experiments. Is it nature of software developer in you, or is it just these kids in curiosity, like, oh, what's that? I'll just do this shiny thing. Because I remember you were always like that. Oh, count me in. I'll try it.
I don't know if it's inherent in software developers or I think people in general are curious. I don't think that's unique to any profession or anything like that. But, as a software developer, I remember my definition of a bad day as a software developer is when I had to spend a day doing production support or maintenance. I hated it. But if I got to do new development, trying something new, saying, can I make this work? Is it something that will work this way? Is it something people are interested in? That really charges me up. When I get to the end of a day doing maintenance work, I was just fried. When I got to the end of a day doing new development, talking to users, talking to people, I was actually ready to keep going.
I have similar things. If there is something mundane, repeatable, like factory moving stuff, just because you need to do it, I'm seeing it as a pointless. I mean, it would be interesting for the first time, and that's it. Because later on, I'll have the answer, oh, I can do it only quicker, but it's just boring. Nothing new
Yep.
in here. So yeah, you are this personality. Accounting, it's not the best choice for you as a career, I would say.
Actually, it's interesting. I remember in college taking an introduction to accounting course. And at the end of that, I said, I'll dig ditches before I'll do this for a living. Because it was, accounting is interesting for about 27 seconds. And then I get bored. I don't want to have the personality that can just sit there and do that all day long.
Are you an impatient person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ask my wife. She would tell you that patience is not a skill set I possess.
Oh, I can relate. Can't do one thing for longer than X amount of seconds.
Yep.
That's how
Yep.
it counts. Now, for our listeners, I'll just reveal a little bit. I had privilege to work with Bob, and no, it was a crucial initiative, one of the biggest consulting groups. We won't go in depth in that, but I can tell that despite you are being impatient, despite you being curious and trying to experiment and count me in person, I think you do have laser focus. I mentioned that earlier on whatever needs to be done. If it is something new, I might say, on risk not being right, that you're resistant until it's resolved. So if something needs to be in place, you will be very vocal, yet delicate when needed. That's you being a politic, to be perfectly honest. And I know you can be at the same time brutal truth teller. And I really admire that. And I haven't made that up, but you have this charm of getting away with things that, so you'll tell what you think, you'll say what needs to be truth, and then for some peculiar reasons, you can get away with that. Is it that somehow things are working miraculously your way? How are you doing it?
I think part of it is I don't take myself seriously. That I like humor. I am perfectly willing to poke fun at myself or even make up poking fun at myself in difficult situations, in charged situations. But I really don't, I don't take myself seriously. And I try, I guess I'll give you an example. This was many, many years ago. I was working over in Japan, working with a big customer over there. And we got into a really, almost a knockdown, drag out argument in the middle of a meeting. And then the meeting was over and he turned to me and said, "Hey, Mahler-san, let's go to the bar and have a drink." And I looked down and I said, "Wait a minute. Are we still friends?" And he said, "Oh, that's work. This is not work." So, I'm not saying I have the ability to compartmentalize like that. But, part of it is I don't take any of this stuff seriously because with very few exceptions, most of what I do is not a matter of life and death. You have to be able to see the humor in the situation, the humor and be willing to give people an out, be willing to give them an opportunity to quote save face, because some people are very married to looking right. And that's fine. If they want to do that, I'm fine with that. I don't care to look stupid. I'm good at it. I practice it frequently. So again, a long answer to your short question. I think the basic thing is I just don't take myself seriously.
Personally, I think it's a kind of humility at the same time and being natural. And, for some, it is really hard to do it. They always have this, let's say, three faces. I read in some smart books that you have face for public, you have face for family, like a mask, and then you are your own personality when no one is there. But by the look of that, you are merging these three. Yes, you are professional when it needs to be, and sometimes it's not political, but you are just saying things that are true, but in more delicate way, which are delicate for you, or is it like?
Well, I think part of it also, if you'd gone back, if you knew me 15 plus years ago, I'd be a different person, because sometimes, at least then, I was afraid to offend somebody, get fired from my job, lose a customer, all these kinds of things. So I would be very careful with what I said and who I said it to, because I didn't want to run that risk. And I don't know if it was during the pandemic shutdown or whatever, when I realized that things will work out, that even if I say something and lose my job or my role gets cut or whatever, that something else will come along. And, I think part of it is my faith. Part of it is looking back over my life and saying there's so many times when bad things happened that either I recovered from or actually turned out to be good things in retrospect. I mean, for example, I mentioned that very first job I got as a programmer. I got fired from that job because I couldn't get along with the head of accounting. I just couldn't do it. And I got fired. And at that time, I thought, oh, the world is coming to an end. But then I was looking in the newspaper and I saw a better job that I actually got to learn new things. So, part of it, I think, too, is I've come in my old age, you can tell I'm not actually 20 anymore, that I've learned that, it'll be okay. No matter what happens, it'll be okay.
So you touch again, accounting cabinet. You didn't get along even with accountants. That's another level of being bored of what they were saying. The budgeting, the funds, the balance, purchase ledger. That's boring stuff. Let's go for crazy sticky notes and let's create something new.
Well, it was, yeah. No, it's just, but I did learn from that you've got to be able to get along with people. That going head to head with people, you're going to lose sometimes, you're going to win sometimes, but you got to say, okay, is it worth the fight? And I'd have to say most of the fights I've had in my life have turned out not being worth it.
I know you have lots of compassion, knowledge, wisdom, of course. You have experience in many industries, in many countries. And that I'm always saying, if you travel, if you work with different organizations as a consultant, it does change you. It changes the way you see things. You touch so many cultures. But is there anything that would make you say, I have enough, sorry? I know that you mentioned that there are fights that are not worth taking. Possibly it goes into the same bucket. But is there, or were there any situations that you were just saying, oh, I had enough, just stop?
Before the pandemic, I traveled all the time. I was on an airplane usually Sunday afternoon, and I was home Friday night. I did that probably three plus weeks a month, every single month. Now, after being home all the time, I'm not willing to get on an airplane anymore. It's just, I don't want to do that anymore. So enough is enough. I think there's also, I've learned that I need to put boundaries in my professional life. For example, I've had people try to schedule meetings for weekends, and I'll say no. Unless the world is ending, unless it literally is a matter of life and death, I don't work weekends. I've set those boundaries. So, maybe that's a little bit of enough is enough. Even in some of the work that I've been doing lately, I've been asking myself that same question, when is enough enough? I'm obviously getting to the age where retirement is an option, but every time I look at my 401k, I realize it really isn't an option. But you know, yeah, so the answer to your question is yes. I have run into situations where I said enough is enough. I've been more willing to say no. It's interesting. I actually have a book sitting on my bookshelf right now that's called The Power of Saying No. From reading through that book, it basically says you have to know how to say no to things so you can say yes to other things. It's interesting. I don't know if you can just, you were commenting on my coffee cup. Basically what it says is memento mori, which basically means remember you'll die. Every minute you spend doing one thing is a minute you can not spend doing something else. So the older I get, the more I'm willing to say enough is enough.
I read your blog about being a yes man and saying yes to too many things. I think that it is very much connected to that. I read some years ago a phrase, I'll not quote it word to word just because it was swearing, but it was until it is yes, it is always no. Meaning
Yep.
that it needs to be really, yeah, I'm into it. Otherwise, it's no. I can relate to that. Not that I'm saying yes to many things. I'm giving thoughts to many things. But with my daughters and my wife, they know that my ultimate first answer is no to everything. Just because it's shorter and, whatever it is safe to say no. Even when they're asking daddy, I'm saying no. Oh, I didn't ask. I said, yeah, you want something. So that's no. Now we can negotiate, but it's much more comfortable way. Of course, it is a little bit, just as a joke. But I think there is some truth in that. You need to say no to so many things, even sometimes they are so interesting because they are not priority. And that takes me to what's your priority list when you are trying to find out, is it worth giving this laser focus that I mentioned earlier? Or is it like, oh, it's so interesting, this limousine driving, that no matter what, I'll just do this?
My stated priorities, which I really try to stick to, are my Lord, my family, my country, my employer, in that order. And, I'm not going to say I'm 100% there. I'm on a good day, I'm maybe 50% there. I will admit my priorities have changed in the last 10 to 15 years. Back then it would have been different. There's things that are important in your life. I'm sure you read Stephen Covey, where Stephen Covey talks about, the four quadrants. You've got the urgent and important, the not urgent and important, the urgent, not important, and the not important, not urgent. If you spend too much of your life in the urgent, not important, you'll never get into the things that are the important and not urgent. And that's where life is in the important, not urgent, because nobody's ever yelling or, keep telling you to do these things. Nobody's telling you to do it, but that's where the important things are. That's where the being present really are. One of my priorities every morning is I take my dogs for a 3-mile walk every single morning. And I get really upset if somebody tries to take that time away from me. And it's because you see the sunrise, there's nobody out there, you hear the birds. It's that time to connect with myself. And, is that important? Yeah, yes. Is it urgent? No. I mean, my dogs will think it's urgent, but it's really not urgent, but it's important. And the time spent with my family, is it urgent? Typically, no, but it's very important. The time spent at work is always urgent. Is it important? Rarely, very rarely. Like I said, I really try to stick with my priorities. I try to judge things based on that. And that's what I'm really trying to make my decisions on. Like I said, I'm not always successful, but I'm trying to do it.
I don't know if you realize, but so many people do not have priority lists or, the values even. They don't understand their values. They don't know what's
Yep.
important for them. Yes, we might feel that we are fortunate because we discovered them. Many people are lost and they are looking for this discipline. They think that, oh, it's a routine that I need to be in. What will happen if you'll be disturbed for a week from your walk with the dogs? What will happen then?
I can tell you, I will not be a happy person. I mean, I'll get over it, but when the few times I do have to travel, obviously I can't walk my dogs. And I'll get up in the morning and it's wrong. It's just, I'm not saying my whole day is bad, but it's just something that, and it's not a routine. It is really not a routine. It's just, and maybe it's not even the walk with the dogs. Maybe it's the time that I can spend in my own head that nobody else is bothering me. I mean, I used to, when I first started doing it, I had my ear pods in, I'd listen to podcasts, I'd listen to whatever, but it really started to affect me better when I didn't put these in, that's that time to think. And you talk about routines, and it's interesting. One of the things I did, I don't know if you can see this or not. I've got this little notebook here, and I've listed out my principles. It says, "I shall not seek pleasure. I shall not seek comfort. I shall not flee suffering. I shall not be overly anxious. I shall not complain. I shall not cast blame. I shall not be impatient. Saint Joseph, pray for me." And it's I'd love to say I live by these, but not always. But I mean, it's just it's 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 not a routine. It's just something I'm trying to be better at.
Because you want to be happy.
I'm not sure what happy is. I'm really not sure. I want to be content. One of my goals is to be a joyful person. It's not a happy person. It's a joyful person. And that, I think, is part of it, is by being a better person, by not letting the unimportant things get into your life.
It's powerful and it's difficult because if you see the drama that sometimes we are being surrounded with, it is really, really influencing our behavior. And sometimes I have this personality that when you have that's the easiest analogy that I can give you. When you have your glass of water and maybe it's a bad day and drop by drop the glass is being filled, and there is a small incident that usually nobody will ever think that can put you off balance even, but this drop makes that water is being split, and then it happens. All the sins of a day are becoming one big rock that's just hitting me. Is it easier for you to deal with that, having these principles, or are you struggling as well sometimes?
I'm struggling every single day. My wife made a statement to me probably about a year ago that really, really impacted me. And she said, "You always seem to be mad at me." And it's like, no, I'm not mad at you. I am just, I'm fed up with the things going on in the world, the things going on at work, all these kinds of things. And when she said that, it was like a light bulb went on in my head. Is that I am letting these things make me appear to be angry to her. I'm not angry at her. I'm just angry. And um, one of the things I'm really trying to do is become less angry in my life. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast. Yes, I was walking my dogs, but I try to do a little bit of this. I was listening to a podcast by a priest by the name of Father Mike. And one of the things he talks about is these agreements you make that you live with that aren't true. And I'm thinking, I said, okay, what are some of the agreements that I've made that I live with that aren't true? And one of them, it just came in my head, is that I have a right to be angry. And it's because, like you said, the things going on in the world, the things going on at work, these kinds of things, I have a right to be angry. I'm going, no, I don't. And that's an agreement I've been living with, that I can be angry because I'm right to be angry. It's like, no, I don't. So I'm fighting that one. But to your question, this is a challenge I have every minute of every day to not get angry or frustrated.
And what is the biggest obstacle in that to maintain it?
I'll show you.
All right. I knew
The news. My experience anyway is if you read the news, you on every page you find something to be angry about. So I'm starting to constrain my consumption of news. I haven't been on social media in probably 4 months, which has helped me a lot. But the other thing that I think has helped me is the awareness that anger is my reaction to somebody else. And the more angry I get, the easier it is for them to control my reaction. And that's my ability, me saying to them, yeah, it's okay for you to make me do something. And I'm not okay with that anymore. It is an evolution. If I make it through an hour of the day without getting frustrated or angry, I call that a success.
Funny you mentioned that. I remember when I read something, it was about a situation that sometimes people are making you angry. And these people sometimes do not know you. Their actions are influencing your thinking. What the book was trying to explain to reader. Ask yourself how big influence these people do have on you, on your life. Do you want to be owned by these people? And every time I was reminding myself, be a goldfish, and then, start over again with, yet one might say that, yeah, that's kind of a, foundation for ignorance, but sometimes maybe it's a blessing. I'm just thinking how you relate to that.
I think you have maybe not ignore it, but at least constrain it. I may have read that same book you were talking about because I remember reading something where it said, whenever you react to somebody, you give them power over your life. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to give somebody else the power? You said, make me angry. It's like, no, nobody makes you do anything. You choose to do it. Your reaction is your choice. It is a daily challenge. And I was actually writing in my journal this morning where I was thinking about how do I get better at this? And I'm thinking, okay, it's not to avoid it. It's to periodically, you have to expose yourself to it so that you can build up that resilience. I read this, and I can't find the book. I got one of my books. I got a huge bookshelf of books. I read all kinds of weird stuff. Guy talking about building resilience. He said, you don't build resilience by avoiding something. You build resilience by exposing yourself to it in little doses so that when it happens, then you don't have a problem. One of the things that used to always set me off, and it always seemed to happen to me in hotels, is for some reason the hot water's not on in the morning. A cold shower, it would just set me off for the day. So one of the things I did for Lent this year is cold showers every single day. And by the end of 40 days, I'm not saying I like the cold showers. I hate the cold showers, but it doesn't impact me the same way. By exposing yourself, I think periodically you have to have these controlled exposures to get used to doing it so that when it happens, maybe you start going, and they go, oh, this isn't a big deal. I can deal with this. It's not a big deal.
I used to struggle with hay fever and, allergies for everything. And what they say, it's like, what, we do have a cure for that. And what they did literally is just gave me these allergens in a very small dosage. So my body got used to it. And then there was a reaction, but was not that severe. So, that's kind of a great analogy. By the way, cold shower is good for you.
It's got to be good for you because it's no fun. My wife is into health food, so I figure anytime she serves me something that tastes good, it's not good for me. If it tastes bad, it's good for me.
I heard that Red Bull, these energy drinks, they started to produce it at a certain taste just because they wanted to be connected to something that is more on a pure side than on a sweet side. When I was young, we had very similar taste of vitamins for children, and that was powder that you needed to just rinse in water, and then it was just great. It smells the same, so for me it is like childhood. Now you mentioned wife, and I want to go beyond the usual. We know you're a professional, we know that you are dealing with obstacles and you are really candid and admire the candor. Sourdough, and you knew that it will be coming. I'm a great fan of bread. Only few places God have the best ones. And I remember when we had sometimes calls and you've been eating it. What's the recipe you can share?
I don't have a recipe. My wife has the recipe. I don't want to know how to make sourdough. She's the sourdough expert. The bad thing is she's decided that we're off carbs. Sourdough is carbs, so I haven't had sourdough in a long time. But how it happened is actually the business manager for our church is a excellent cook. And several years ago, he had a class for making sourdough. So she said, I got nothing to do. I'll go learn how to make sourdough. She got some sourdough starter and she started experimenting. Just before Christmas time, we get lots of sourdough. Every day she's making sourdough for the neighbors, for us, but she makes the best sourdough. But you never know what's in it. She's tried whole grain. She even tried, she bought a mill and milled her own flour to try one time to see if it made a difference. I didn't notice the difference. So, maybe it did. I don't know. But she's tried all kinds of different ingredients to make the sourdough good. And the best smell in the house, Patrick, is fresh sourdough. It's awesome.
Agree.
Yeah.
My wife used to do a little bit of bread. Now she started to struggle a little bit with time with kids because before it get cold, it was gone. Basically, it was that good. But I love it. My older daughter, she does have celiac disease. She cannot eat gluten, so that's kind of difficulty because she would have to do two. One gluten-free and one for us, which just doubles the trouble. I'm not going into a kitchen and I'm not trying to do the sourdough because I'll just fail really, really badly. Your wife thinking of, okay, I have nothing to do. I'll do maybe a sourdough. I'll learn this. I'll experiment. Are you similar?
I'm trying to be. What I find myself doing is I overcommit myself to little pointless tasks, so I have less time to try new things. I am really trying to say no to more, so I've got more time free to try new things. And there's things I won't try. Like I said, I will not try jumping out of an airplane with a parachute attached to my back. Won't do it. Not interested in that. But there's for example, this was probably 3 years ago. My wife and I decided that we'd never owned a travel trailer before. We decided, what the heck? Let's try it. So we went and bought ourselves a travel trailer. We basically bought it, say, okay, how much travel trailer will our truck that we already have tow? That was why we picked our trailer. And we had no idea if we were even going to like trailering, even enjoy it. And it turns out we love it. It's a great time. But, I will try, sometimes I'll try things completely outside of my comfort zone just to see, is it something I like doing? Some things I'll never do again. But, if you don't try new things, you will never know whether you like them or not. And you may get to the end of your life and say, darn, I wish I tried that.
Every child is trying everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to walk. Thinking on loud, what is happening with humanity that at some point in our life, we are stopping with experimentation. We are stopping finding things. Somehow we think maybe it's just me and I'm, the only one person in the world that thinks it's a problem, that we think that we'll be set with something, set with career, set with a skill set, and that's it. This is what I was looking for and nothing else.
I think it's the older we get, the more we focus on the downside. We focus on the risk. That, for example, many, and this was a long time ago, I don't do this anymore. I took some skiing lessons and do not start skiing as a 20 something. It just doesn't work. So I'm watching the skiing lessons with these small kids, and these kids were fearless, fearless. They'd slide down the biggest hills. They didn't have poles. They weren't worried about anything. And so I asked the instructor, I said, why are these kids so good at learning to ski where adults aren't? And he said, it's easy. Adults know what a broken bone feels like. Kids don't. He said they're just trying because they focus on the upside. I'm having a great time sliding down this hill. Adults are focused on the, what if I hit that tree? And, I think it's the same thing with us as well. I mentioned my neighbor who has the limo service. He has had so many different varied careers in his life. He's been a bartender. He's been a cook. He's been a limo driver. He has done all these different things. And I asked him, I said, Billy, why? Why do you try all these different things? And he said, I get bored doing something and I'll try something different. I said, don't you worry about supporting your family? Don't you worry about this? And he said, yes, but it works out. And I envy him so much because, and I mean, I envy you. You're trying something new. You started a podcast. You're trying all this new stuff. And I keep thinking about what are the downsides? I got to pay the bills. How do I support my family if I lose that paycheck? It's all about, I focus on the downsides versus the upsides. I mean, for example, my travel trailer, it sounds like a great time. No, almost every time I'm thinking, okay, what do I do if the slide doesn't go in? What do I do if the truck breaks? I'm always thinking about the things that might happen, and it ruins frequently the fun of things that are happening.
Does that make you angry?
It bothers me. It bothers me because I focus on the downside. I mean, if you look in the back of my truck, I've got oil, I've got tools, I got all the things that might happen so I could fix them. Every time we've broken down, it's been something I haven't planned for. And every time we've broken down, it's been okay. It's worked out. We figured it out. Some of them have been not as fun as other times, but it's all worked out. But I still worry about the what ifs.
What ifs? Overthinking.
Yep. Oh, yep.
Yeah. My friend used to tell me that sometimes there are things that I'm overthinking. And I think, yes, I did that for certain reasons. When I didn't know what I'm doing and when I wasn't excited, and maybe when it was really with too many unknowns. And there were like activities, how to paint a room. Okay, that's easy. You can always reverse it. So yes, you are right. It is kind of a risk aversion and trying to understand what can possibly go wrong. Everything can go possibly wrong. But unless you try, maybe you'll be lucky, you don't know. I think there are many people who are just looking at the risk factor. And I can relate that to even organizations. The more mature organization, the higher the risk aversion is, meaning that they have more to lose. Isn't it fear of losing something than gaining? And we are always seeing that, even though it's 50-50 chance, I believe the other 50 is more likely to happen. I don't know. We spoke about working in an environment that you don't need to travel a lot, that you don't need to be in a plane, every day or every week, or be on a different continent even. I see you as a master of working from anywhere. And it is about, having the battery, having the trailer, living near the farm. And that's amazing how you are doing it, because I struggled.
I'm doing it not well. And the reason I'll say that is that, for example, when I'm in the trailer, it's not as difficult because it's similar to being in my office. I mean, I have a table, I have a chair. I mean, it's similar. I still get distracted because, my wife and I are both in this 22-foot trailer, and I mean, it's a little bit distracting. Up at the cabin is even worse. And the thing I really loved about our cabin is it's totally off grid. I can't work up there because I have no cell coverage, I have no electricity, and then I got Starlink. So now I can work up there. And I tried to work up there. I set up my Starlink, I had meetings, but sitting outside by the fire, pretending to work, it just, in the great open, if it's completely different than being inside four walls, and I'm still struggling with that one. It doesn't work very well for me. Like I said, the trailer is very similar. It's kind of similar environment, but when I get outside of that, I'm struggling with it. So I don't have a good answer.
No, that's a very good answer. I was really, really curious. Are you the person that can just get with a laptop wherever? Because I'm seeing many of young people, younger than us, Starbucks, 20 minutes, then on call somewhere else, then they park and they go to different cafeteria or barista's place, then they go to a park, and I'm thinking, it is difficult for me. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm not in that space that I can just work in a coffee shop when thousands of people are walking, passing by, and that just absorb my attention, and I won't be able to do any creative stuff. Maybe I can be on a call and just, had some hums. Yes, yeah, I like that. But I wouldn't be able to do creative thing. Is it just me, or do you think that they're struggling or just pretending that they're working?
I don't know. I don't know if they're working or not, or if they're struggling. I know that I'm like that. If there's a lot of distractions, I struggle with the distractions. I mean, for example, for this podcast, I had to put my dogs in their crate because I know if my dogs were over there laying in their bed, I'd be watching them. I wouldn't be looking at you. So I think it's easy to get distracted, but I think it also, my experience anyway, is if it's something I'm really intensely interested in, it doesn't matter where it is or what's going on around me, I can do it. If it's stuff I just have to do because somebody else has told me to, slightest distraction, squirrel, I'm off doing something else. I mean, it's like I watch my dog out back, and he can be just sitting there watching the world go by, and if he sees a squirrel, I mean, he's laser focused on it. Once that squirrel is gone, he's off watching the birds, the bees, whatever else. So I think it depends. It depends on whether I'm really interested in something, then I can focus.
So what are you interested in? Really, really?
I think what I'm really interested in is that's a really tough question. What am I really interested in? I think part of it is learning new things. Part of it is understanding what makes people tick. Why do they try things? Um, and part of it also is how can I make other people's lives better? How can I help them? How can I like to leave people happier than when I found them. So, I mean, that's what I'm really interested in.
That's kind of Boy Scout mentality about.
I don't know if it's a Boy Scout mentality. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it's a symptom of my pride that I can make them happier, that I can help them. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
What if it's impossible to help them or leave them in a better state? How does that make you feel?
Frustrated. One of the reasons I work with people is to bring my experience to them as saying what has worked, what has not worked. And when you tell somebody something, okay, you can go this direction, but here's what I've seen happen, and they
Hmm.
go that direction anyway. It gets frustrating, but some people need to learn it for themselves.
How is that with your dogs? I know that you have Labradors. I'm willing to have a Labrador because we lost our dog, and my wife is on a fence. She either wanted Basset Hound, and then I said, "What about the Labrador?" And he said, "Oh, I like this one too." And I know that we'll end up with two dogs, but what I read about this breed is they need to learn all the time. They need to be challenged, otherwise they'll just go mad. That sounds just like that you need to learn things. And I know that there is this saying, owners and dogs are very similar, and you are
Mhm.
choosing the dog based on your characteristics, and dogs can tell a lot about the owner. Can you relate to that in your Labradors? Are you teaching them, and are you frustrated when they are not doing what do you want them to do?
Well, it's interesting. We actually had a dog trainer several years ago because I was getting frustrated with my Labrador. And he said what he does is he trains the owners. He doesn't train the dogs. He said because the owners have to understand the dogs well enough and be comfortable with them and trust them, then they trust you. We've got two Labrador. Well, one's a Labrador mix, and the other one's a full-bred Labrador. And the Labrador mix is the older one, and he's the smarter one because he knows what I want him to do. And sometimes it's kind of like I see him saying, "I'm not going to do it. I know what you want. I'm just not going to do it." And other times he'll be looking at like, "What do you want?" And so, yes, they like to learn new things. And the interesting thing I've learned with them is after we had the trainer train me on how to train them, we've gotten very good at walking off leash. So I trust them off leash. They behave better off leash than on leash. And it's because what the trainer told me is that when they're on leash, they know they don't have to think, that the person will tell them what to do. Off leash, they have to think. And so it's much better for them to be off leash. And, they are very smart dogs. You have to, at least my experience is, you have to work with them. You have to be repetitive. It's kind of like sometimes working with people. You have to repeat the same thing over and over again. They have to understand, the what's in it for them to do it. My full-blooded Labrador will do anything for food. My Labrador mix will do almost anything for attention.
Oh, we had Cocker Spaniel, and it was crazy as they go. Really, really crazy. Smart in a way, but very limited smart. I would rather say very joyful, great family dog, big heart, not that smart. It's just like a Winnie the Pooh, very big heart but very small brain.
Yep.
Really joyful dog. I think that he was thinking that he's a massive, big, very confident dog. We've been in this big park that was in Winslow in UK. We took the dog off leash and it was calm. And there were like plenty of dogs, bigger, smaller. The small one were really annoying, barking and trying to get an attention, but it was fun. Then he jumped into a river, swam a little bit, came back. Once on a leash, he was just pulling everywhere, very impatient, very, let's say, frustrated that we are limiting his ability to smell, to sniff, to do things. Once off the leash, not interested in anything, just staying, along the leg. So I think it is really true that once they're on a leash, they have some curiosity, but most of the time it's just limitation and they don't think.
And we noticed even up at our cabin where we can let them run, and we've got a bunch of room, and there's nothing for them to get in trouble with. That they'll vanish down to the river. They'll go swim in the river, but they always come back, and they're always very good. And when they're off leash, I mean, even off leash, they won't get more than like 20 feet away from me. And if they see another dog, they'll come running back and sit down. So, I mean, but on leash, they want to run over and see the new dog. They behave completely differently.
thing is that with children as well. I noticed that when you leave them, they just do, things miraculously well. Once you are saying don't do this, don't do that, it's just the effects are really,
Yep.
really bad. Results are really terrible. You mentioned cabin again. You are going ahead. I hate that because there is no surprises for listeners. So when I'm seeing you as a person who is like impatient but very laser focused, and at the same time full compassion but very candid, it might sound like two different personalities. I think you are balancing it very well. You are very connected to the world, very vocal, working with technology, software, systems, improving it way ahead. And then sometimes you are just like a lumberjack, I'm not interested in technology, I'll just do this stuff. How come? And how you are balancing it?
Well, it's the thing I really like about the cabin is I am disconnected. I am off grid. But when you get so used to being able to quote Google anything and get any answer, and then all of a sudden you can't, you have to figure stuff out. I One of the things I did at the cabin is I put in a solar system because we had no power up there. Obviously, we're off grid. I had no idea what I was doing. I've never done any of this before. I did all the research I got and said, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. And I get up there and immediately run in, okay, how do I hook this up? And just figuring out, I've reversed polarity on more than one inverter and burned it out. I will never do that again. But it's just by figuring stuff out. And also, if the solar system doesn't work, we don't have electricity. Well, we don't have electricity now. So it's not a big deal. Figure this stuff out as you go. It takes about a day or two up there for me to get, quote, mentally disconnected from being able to find anything I want and have the technology. But then I really enjoy it. When we first bought the cabin, I said, okay, we're going to make this like the old ways. Chop down trees with an axe. I'm not okay. I did one of those and bought a chainsaw. So it's not that I'm anti-technology up there, but I'm learning what technology you really need. Indoor plumbing is an awesome thing when you have it. We don't have indoor plumbing up there. Being able to turn on the faucet and getting hot water is an awesome thing. When you have to heat it over the fire and plan half an hour in advance to have hot water, it's not so awesome. So, you learn the technology you need and the things you don't need. I wasn't, like you, I was not brought up on the internet. I remember when we didn't have the internet. Maybe people that were brought up on the internet would have a totally different reaction, but it's actually kind of nice.
I remember the world before internet. I remember when, there was like a blackout with the power grid, but something happened, and that was happening from time to time in every location. I remember, that we didn't have microwaves. I remember that oven was a little bit different. I remember, ancient times. I know that some kids are saying that world was black and white. They're thinking that, we're like very unhappy because we didn't have internet. Well, in fact, we had books, we had friends, we had bikes, and yeah, we had loads of fun. Now I'm seeing kids, sitting in a
Yep.
green field, and what they do, guess what? They're on their mobile phones, speaking with each other. I'm like,
Yep.
is it the nostalgia of this life, or is it? I'm not saying detox, but does that help you getting calmer, or is it escapism?
I think it makes me calmer. I don't know if it's really escapism because even up there, I'm worrying about all the things that could go wrong. Several years ago, I almost lost my wife to an injury, and she ended up on flight for life to the hospital. And I'm thinking, okay, if something happens up there, we can't call anybody because we don't have a phone. There's no landline, there's nothing. If I got a hold of somebody, could I tell them where we are? No, because there's no addresses. You think about all the things that could go wrong that you have to deal with. So even then up there, I'm worried about things that could go wrong. But like I said, after a couple of days, it's really just, it's almost, I don't want to use the word detail. It's just like you breathe differently up there. You just, It's amazing. I still tell people this. When we first bought this cabin 10 years ago, the first night we spent up there, I woke up in the middle of the night saying, "What is that noise?" And I realized it was my breathing. It's because it was so quiet. There was no motors running. There was no noise. I've never experienced that before. And it's just, there's no external sensory input. So it gives you a lot more time to think, to observe, to watch the deer, to watch the dogs, to hear the wind, to see the birds trying to steal the food off of your table. It's things you would never notice before because of all these other sensory inputs.
Deers. You did that again. I remember when you were showing me the footage when deer was just walking majestically near the cabin. Really amazing stuff. You are very close to nature. And I see difference when I'm close to nature. When I'm opening windows and I hear birds, it is like calming me. And it's really, really great. I remember when we lived with my wife in our first house, and that was like a new build, and there were no trees, no birds. And it was quiet, okay, because it was kind of a rural area. The problem was that I heard only neighbors doing, vacuuming things, etc. And I didn't like that noise. I said, I need trees because I feel safe. How does your wife feel, or is she also worrying when she's in a cabin, or does she have like a completely different attitude?
I think prior to her accident, she didn't worry. Now, it was probably 3 years after her accident before she felt comfortable being up at the cabin overnight. So I don't think she worries as much as I do, or if she does, she doesn't tell me. Um, I think my wife is a lot better at being present, being calm than I am. Either that or she hides it better than I do. I don't know which. I don't know which. She's very, she grows a lot of our food during the summer. She's very good at doing these things. But my wife is much better, at least what I think, is she's much better at being in the moment than I am. I'm always thinking, somebody told me once, Bob, you spend more of your life in the future than you do in the present. I think she spends more of her life in the present than the future.
And I can relate to that. Like, situation with my wife is very similar to yours, and I think I'm looking for the future just to, secure the future, maybe, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to figure out how to secure my children, my wife, so we are on a safe side. My wife is thinking, yeah, but we need to do something now. Let's do something for a home. And I find that sometimes I'm saying, oh, let's do it later because we need to do something first. And I'm thinking, is it ladies, mothers, wives that are having this in common to be present, be loving and caring in the moment? Yes, worrying a little bit about the future, but being more open about, okay, this is important now, not thinking what will be in future. And we are just, hunters or whoever we were, trying to figure out what the next day should look like so we can secure another day. And somehow it works out really well, but it looks like it is easier for them to be in a moment. And I might say that I'm jealous that she's doing it so effortlessly. Sometimes I can't. And by the look of things, you are also, maybe not worrying, maybe not frustrated about future, but feeling this uncertainty and trying to figure it out.
No, and I think my wife is better about prioritizing and putting importance in the present than the future. I mean, every time I'm kind of like you. Every time she says I need to spend money, my answer is no. It's always no, because I'm thinking, okay, what if something happens in the future and we need this money for an emergency? And you know, we don't need this new bathroom right now. We don't need all of this, but I think she's better about saying that we don't need it, but it'll be make us more comfortable, make it, it's whatever. And I'm always saying no. So I don't I don't know if they're better at being in the present or less concerned about the future or less worried, or I honestly don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer. I just know I envy her. That's all I know is I envy her.
I'm exploring it because it is like you mentioned, oh, we need this bathroom, and you think, why would we need that? The other one is okay-ish.
Yep.
And then she said, okay, but you'll live for the next X amount of time. It will just get better. No, it will be just getting worse. We need to change it now and stop thinking about this. It will be all okay. So it's like, oh, maybe you are thinking about the pleasures of a day only, and it is just carpe diem. There is no hell, there is no end of the world. Just do whatever you want. And it's always like that. The things are hitting me, oh, is it this or that? Should I do it or should I not do it? And the more I think, then I'm starting overthinking. The more I'm overthinking, the more anxious I'm about, the end results. What if? Just like you mentioned. And then at the end, I'm just like, I'm either so tired, so I'll just say, yes, just do it. Or we are angry and we are negotiating, and I'm always losing. So at the end of the day, it's always like she says. I think that, it's incredible. Cabin, dogs, work-life balance to a certain degree, limo, you doing the Starlink and solar panels and all the energy. You're finding time to do it. But you mentioned that there was a time that it wasn't like that you were a different person. Are there any pivotal moments in your life that you think shaped you in a way?
Oh, I don't know if there's any huge ones. I mean, there's a bunch of little ones, maybe some bigger than others. Um, I can't point to any pivotal things. I think maybe like I said, my wife's accident and the realization that yes, I could lose her. Definitely made a difference. Um, I don't know if I can point to any real pivotal. I think one of the things that made a big difference in my life, in the recent history, is one Lent, my wife decided we're going to give up TV for Lent. Okay, that was hard. I honestly, okay, I cheated a little bit because yes, I traveled for a living and nobody would know if I turned the TV on in the hotel room. And after 40 days, I said, you know what? I can do without TV. Now we don't even have a TV in our house. And I'm thinking back, saying, okay, how did I ever have time to get things done and spend all these hours in front of the TV? I mean, I don't know if that's a pivotal moment, a change in my life. I honestly don't know, but I think there's been a lot of smaller course corrections along the way that have moved me from who I was to who I'm becoming. I'm not, you know, I am not the person I want to be, but I'm sure as heck not the person I was yesterday. So I think it's the more little things than anything else.
Small steps to build a character. I mentioned
To change a character, yeah.
change. You mentioned Lent. You mentioned the faith. How does that help you? How important it is, and how you think people should try or start with the journey of the faith to be where they want to be.
I don't know how people that don't have faith face the world. I truly don't, because there's so much bad stuff going on. There's so much ugly in the world. Um, the faith I have now and the faith I had probably 15 years ago are totally different. You mentioned pivotal moments. I actually, there was one pivotal moment where probably 13, 14 years ago, I got really, 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 well, I thought I was dying. I honestly thought I was dying. And I remember laying in bed saying, Lord, into your hands I commit my spirit, because I thought I was dying. The next morning I woke up, I was fine. But at that point, my faith became much more important to me. Um, my faith journey it's been a long one. I finally have finished actually reading the Bible and studying the Bible. I don't understand 99.9% of it. I can't figure it out. But, I think my faith journey means a lot to me. Like I said, my priorities are my Lord, my family, my country, my employer, in that order. Um, and I really try to base a lot of my decisions on that. I guess I screw up constantly. And I'm Catholic, and in Catholic we have this sacrament called confession. And confession, you go in and confess your sins, and as long as you really want to change your life, the priest absolves you from your sins. Well, I'm generally lucky to make it out the door of the church before I commit another sin. That's about as far as I can get because I fall frequently. And my faith, I don't wear it on my sleeve, as some people say, but it's really become important to me. And I don't know how people that don't have faith face the world every day. I don't know.
That's important. I'm Roman Catholic by uprise and by being baptized and so forth. And I had this thought recently, and don't ask how it just came to my mind, but I thought maybe because of the technology, AI, that people are trying to prolong their lives, and about the consciousness, that people want to make the consciousness forever. And I'm like, that's kind of touching a little bit of religion. That's touching, what has been written. Long story short, I was thinking that if we have people who are agnostic or people who are like completely not believing in anything, or atheists, it is very sad, because for them, in their mind, with their death, that's it. There's nothing else. And I will be very, very sad, and that's the best word I can find without any frustration, again, to not see what's happening there, to not understand things, and they're in a position that they agree with that. There's nothing there. How does that sound to you?
I agree with you. I think the people that are trying to prolong their lives are people that either are afraid to die or really think there is nothing more. I'm not saying I want to die, but I'm looking forward to eventually meeting God and asking questions like, God, mosquitoes, why? Explain this to me. Yellow jackets, explain this to me. I know there's a reason. I know you had a reason. I just don't get it. I know that's stupid little questions, but I mean,
That's
it's
stupid. It's very interesting. Now I'm thinking, why?
It's like there's got to be a reason. I know they feed the fish. I get it, but why? And one of the things that I've been listening to some of these podcasts and exploring is people ask the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And I'm saying, okay, read Job. That'll help you understand a little bit about it. But why do some of these things happen? And I can't remember whether it was a YouTube video or a podcast I was listening to, where the host was asking the question, Lord, what did this world do that you would have unleashed what happened in the last 4 years on us? If you read back about the Bible, I mean, what happened in the last 4 years is nothing like what happened to the ancient Israelites when they turned away from God. I mean, their country was destroyed. They were shipped off into slavery. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not looking forward to my death, but I think it would be an amazing adventure. That's all I can say.
I also believe that, there are some situations in our life that are happening because we need to understand something and we need to learn from that. sometimes, and I read, some biographies of really famous people, talented people, and they had, some of them, really difficult childhood, really difficult situations in their life. They lost like family members and so forth. And somehow I feel and believe that it happened because this is the way to reveal their talent or reveal what they need to do. Painful. I feel sorry sometimes. Obviously, they were able to do it, and that's amazing. They didn't surrender halfway through, but they carry this pain forever, and maybe that's the price. And this part I don't understand, but I understand it triggers something that humanity benefits from. But in some way, it is kind of as a grand scheme that we don't understand the picture, that it's too big for us to comprehend, I believe.
One of the things I say this, I get this thing it's called a Monk manual.
Mm.
And every week you do a retro on the previous week. And one of the questions he asks is, God is teaching me. And so every week I've said, okay, what is God teaching me? And sometimes my answer is a question mark. I have no idea. But I firmly believe that nothing happens to us that doesn't happen to us for a reason. We may not understand the reason. It may take forever we may never understand the reason. But every person we meet, everything that happens to us happens for a reason. We don't have to figure it out, but we're a different person. We're a different person based on what happens to us and the people we meet. And God is teaching us. My father passed away. It'll be 10 years in June. He passed away quickly. And well, actually, it's taken me a long time to figure out that I'm actually not glad it happened. I'm happy it happened because he was going through a lot of pain. He was on medication that caused him to lose his memory. He could not remember from one minute to the next. He'd ask me the same questions over and over again. And I said, okay, Lord, why did you take him? And I'm thinking, maybe during that time he learned what he needed to learn, and it was time. I haven't come to terms with it, but it's the only thing I can think of.
Thanks for sharing that. Really, really impactful. And believing that, it is for a reason. I can tell that many things in my life happened for a reason, and I understood them after many years. Like, oh, if that wouldn't happen, then I'll be in a completely different stage in my life and doing different things. I think that it would be great to share some of wisdom and what is impactful, what could be impactful for people that are listening to us. But what is the artifact, the book, the quote, the song, the story, the picture that you think that can help everyone in a universal way in their lives to have the better work-life balance, so-called, or to understand themselves, to be more compassionate, to be more like you on the good side, not impatient and frustrated?
I think that, and I don't know if it's really a quote, but I think the thing that's made the most difference to me is to realize that it's in general not that serious. That, I guess maybe the quote, okay, I'm going to quote a book that I don't remember the name of, but what the author talked about is when you look at a decision, you ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, will it matter in 10 minutes? Will it matter in 10 days? Will it matter in 10 years? If it doesn't matter in 10 years, don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. If it's not going to matter in 10 days, don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. If it's not going to matter in 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. So, there's so many things I think about saying, oh, this is really important. This is really critical. Will it matter in 10 years? Probably not. The only thing that I can think of that will matter in 10 years is if my wife can no longer think I'm always mad at her. that's going to matter in 10 years. Nothing else really matters.
Oh, she touched you with saying that, you're mad at her.
Yeah, it was like a hammer. It was like a hammer.
Bob, is there anything I should ask you? You think I should ask?
Boy, you asked more questions than I honestly thought you were going to ask me. So I really can't think of anything. Actually, no, I got one that you didn't ask me. Okay. Are you glad you said yes to doing this podcast?
Ah, are you glad?
I am now. I honestly thought yesterday, maybe I should text Patrick and say I changed my mind. I don't want to do it. But no, I'm really glad I did it because you asked a lot of really good questions that really made me think. And no, I'm really glad I did it. Oh. And even though you and I worked together for at least 6 months, I think I've learned more about you in the last 90 minutes than I did in the last 6 months, in that 6-month period. So, that was great.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, what did you learn?
Oh, I learned, I think you mentioned you had a dog before. I mean, I learned that you are a very insightful person. I learned that you're Roman Catholic. I didn't know that.
Oh, right.
And also, I mean, I've learned this over the last couple of months that you're really handy and that if I ever need a bathroom remodeled, I will be calling you. I really enjoyed it. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. Oh. And hopefully it was a good use of your 90 minutes, being that now 90 minutes of your life you will never get back again. But no, I think it's the best 90 minutes I've spent in a very long time. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Bob. It was a pleasure. I was really looking forward. I must admit, I was very anxious about how it will go out. This is because you are a personality that I admire. Because of the professional life, because of the personal life, because of the way you think, you speak. And I wanted to learn that. And I know it will take a while to understand fully, really, the wisdom. But I believe there is more people like me. And I wanted to share with them what can good things happen. What if you are with that personality, with that point of view. And I hope that by sharing this, we help these people as well.